So the first two pots we're going to pot up now are the Hellebore and Twig planter and then the little Hellebore kit. There's so many this month, I will try and remember all of their names, but yes, so the Hellebore and Twig planter and the little Hellebore. So I'm going to do these together so I don't bore you with talk about care for Hellebores, but I'll pot them both up and I'll talk you through them both in turn. So we'll start with the planter. Now the planter, you will receive this gorgeous scalloped pot. It's a 21 centimetre across, a great size, so good for any of your potting up really. So once your Hellebores have gone over or you kind of want to change up, pop those in the garden and then you can put basically anything in this pot. You can put a mixture of different varieties of plants, you can put herbs in there. It's just a really good versatile pot. So it has this lovely scalloped edging. This is my own personal pot, so it's a bit sort of rustic and used and battered, but I just thought I'd show you what it will look like after lots and lots of use. Obviously the ones behind me are brand new, and that's how yours will look when you first receive it. Then we have the 4 little Hellebore plants. Now these are teeny tiny 7 centimetre pots. You may receive yours as 3 12 centimetre pots. Either way, you'll either get 4 little ones or 3 bigger ones, but they're both the same. It's just the same height. It's just that one of them is in a bigger pot, but there's less of them, if that makes sense. You'll have your moss, your gravel and your compost in your kit. You will also have some dry thyme and some birch twigs as well to finish off your potting. So then for the next kit, so that's the little Hellebore kit, that comes in a 14 centimetre ribbed Simona pot and matching saucer. Now this is a really, really old pot that I've used countless times. It's really, really battered, but just so beautiful. So that is in the little Hellebore kit. And then this is your little, but still quite big Hellebore. Excuse me, this one is quite fresh. So only 2 of the flowers are in bloom. There's 2 buds just there. And I can see some poking up through the soil in there. So it may arrive sort of more in bud, but obviously once you pot it up, it will then start to bloom. Okay, so let's start with the planter. You're going to start off adding in your gravel. Good. Now the gravel is there for drainage. It's to make sure the roots don't just sort of sit in water when you give it a good drink. Okay, and then adding in some compost. Now your compost is really heavily gritted, so it will be really well draining compost, really high quality. So it will provide your Hellebores with all the nutrients that they need. So I would say add in a decent amount of compost, maybe an inch or 2 on top of the gravel. Okay, let's check. So I just want to check the height. I think I could probably put some more in. Okay. And then just put your Hellebore on top of the compost just to see where it sort of comes up to. That's fine. Okay, so now we can start putting in our Hellebore plants. Give them a good drink. Make sure you take them straight out of the box when you receive your kits. Don't leave the box closed, you know, for a day or 2. Excuse me, because obviously the Hellebores need some sunlight. So popping in your plants. Now, as I do with most of my planters, I tend to angle the plants slightly sort of heading outwards. So if, for example, this one, I'm potting it in that way rather than that way. It just means that it just sits a little bit nicer when it's finished. Now with these, you'll find again that there's quite a lot that would be in bud. It's one of the magical things about Hellebores, in my opinion. If you have a look at your plants, you'll see that maybe some of your flowers are in bloom. if you look down, you will see teeny tiny buds. Some of them you might not be able to see because they are just under the surface of the soil, and they just start to spring up, and they're just a gorgeous, gorgeous plant. Okay, so they're all in now. And now I'm just going to add in the compost just around them. Just filling in those gaps. And then gently sort of compressing the compost down, being careful though of all the little buds around the bottom of the plant. Okay, that's it, that they're all in, and then just gently push down. Just making sure you're gentle with the buds. And then now we can add in our moss. So in your kits you'll receive two different types of moss. You'll receive your flat moss, which is this sort of woodlandy kind of green moss. You might have some twigs and pine cones in there. And then you'll have your bun moss, which is this sort of chunkier, fresh green kind of moss here. Okay, so I'm going to start with some flat moss. I'm just going to kind of break it up and just simply add it on top of where I see soil. Now it's really important to make sure you're being really gentle with the buds, like I keep sort of saying, with the buds near the base of the plant, because they will be, once your existing flowers sort of fade, they will be the new flowers. Now I'll go through some care before we head on to the little hellebore. I'll go through some care and then I'll recap the care after I finish the potting up the other one. But the important thing with hellebores is to make sure they're not somewhere really, really warm. They do like cooler temperatures. They are predominantly garden plants that can be kept indoors as sort of a decorative plant that would then need to go outside to survive sort of longer than, say, a couple of months. So you keep them indoors for Christmas, for November, for the festive season, and then come January you can pop them in your garden and they will come back next year. So they like to be kept somewhere cool, not sort of next to a radiator. I tend to keep most of my plants really in the kitchen, in my kitchen, so they're fine in there. Keep them well watered, so damp but not waterlogged. So give them a good drink, let the water run through into the saucer and then empty any excess water from the saucer into the sink, so that they're not sat in sort of water for prolonged periods of time. So keep this soil damp, and then when the flowers do fade, you cut them, you deadhead them at the base of their stem, so really close to the base of the plant where all the sort of leaves and all the exciting kind of bud stuff's going on. You trim them there, and then new buds will then take their place. But again, sorry to bore you, just be really careful of the little buds so you don't snip those off, because those are your new excuse me, your new flowers. So you deadhead a faded flower, discard that, and then new buds will start to grow up to take that faded flower that's gone's place. So that's about it. Right, let's add in the twigs. So you will have your birch, which is the dry sort of brown twig, birch twigs, and you just simply need to take off little sections that you're then going to add in, and the pure purpose of these is just to add some texture, some visual interest, and to make it look all kind of lovely and festive. Okay, so you're just gently pushing those twigs in You can go as high or as low as you want. I personally like them to be sort of a couple of inches above where the florals are. So nothing too tall, but you want them tall enough that you can see them. You know, varying heights, some taller than others. And then the time, the dry time. So this again, it's not kind of sort of necessarily visually beautiful on its own. It's just that when you then take it apart, you don't need snips for that. You can actually just take it apart with your fingers. It's just adds just this such a lovely kind of contrasting texture. It makes your pocket look sort of woodlandy and festive and wintry. So yeah, you just simply separate the kind of stems of the thyme and then add them in. Okay, now I think that is all potted up. Obviously the height of the flowers will rise, so you can just make sure maybe 2 or 3 inches above the flowers I think is a perfect height for the sort of the twiggy bits. So that is your planter. Now let's move on to the little Hellebore kit. Okay, so in your 14cm Simona pot with the matching saucer, you pop the pot on the saucer before you add in your gravel. Now add in all the gravel that's in your kit to provide really good drainage for your Hellebore. Now this one is very young and it's got 2 flowers and then some gorgeous little buds coming through. So there's 3 buds there and then more I can see coming up at the bottom. So hopefully when you receive your plant, you will have existing flowers to enjoy, but hopefully then you would then plant and then you'll get more flowers coming up afterwards. Okay, so after giving it a good drink, sorry I did put it in there and then forgot the level, I'm going to add in a little bit of compost on top of the gravel. Just sort of a handful probably. That way those roots are going to get some good nutrients. Okay. So then give your Hellebore a good drink on arrival. Gently tease it out of its pot and then place it. And then gently, being really careful of those little buds that are around the base of the plant that you might not actually, be able to see. But gently, with your fingers, just compress the compost down. And then just add in, you probably won't need a lot, a sort of sprinkling of compost around the plant on top. Again, I'm going to be so boring you all with saying this, but being careful of the little buds because we don't want to squish any kind of potential flowers that are about to kind of shoot up and bloom. Okay, so adding in just a little sort of sprinkling layer of compost over the plant, and now we can go in with our moss. So I'm going to start with my flat moss, which is this more sort of woodlandy one. And I'm going to lay that on top of the soil, being careful of the little buds around the base of the plant. I'm sorry, like a broken record. Okay, then I'm going to add in some bun moss. So there, I've just taken off the back of it, basically just the kind of root system at the back, the sort of brown bit, and it's just left me with the green there. It just sits a bit better on top of the soil. So just like that. Okay. So that's all mossed up, and now we can add our birch twigs and our thyme. So again, just breaking your twigs down into sort of 6-inch sections maybe. Can be smaller, can be taller, depending on how you like it to look. That sort of thing. Okay. And then just gently sort of feeding them through. It doesn't need to go down into the compost, it can just go sort of about where the moss is. The moss will support it. Just obviously being careful with the buds at the base of the plant. Okay. Couple more. And now I'm going to add in the dried thyme. And now this is just to add lovely texture to your potting up. And it makes it look all sort of woodlandy and beautifully festive. And then just to recap the care that I've just mentioned for the planter, obviously it's the same. So hellebores like to be kept relatively cool. They don't like really, really hot rooms. So keep them away from, you know, like a radiator. Don't put them on a table next to a radiator, for example. Keep the soil damp, but not waterlogged. So if the saucer underneath your pot is filled with water, it means that possibly their root system is sat in water, which could lead to root rot. So the best thing to do is to give it a nice drink. Just water it around the base of the plant. Make sure you're watering the plant, not just the moss. Make sure that water is sinking through into the soil so that it is reaching the roots at the base of the plant. Excuse me. And then make sure that there's no water left in the saucer, because it's a good thing if the water does drain through. It shows that you've watered sort of adequately and it's got enough water, but just don't then leave the water in the saucer. The other thing is when the flowers fade, which they will over time, you can deadhead. So to deadhead, you snip the stem that flower is on down by the base of the plant. So you find the base, the end of the stem basically, and that's where you snip it. It doesn't need to be really, really tightly down to the bottom. You can leave, you know, a couple of centimetres, that's fine. But just be careful of any sort of new buds that are starting to form at the base of the plant, because those are the new buds that will grow and replace that faded flower. So you snip the faded flowers off, and then in terms of sort of longevity of your hellebores, they will last a couple of months indoors, and then you can move them into your garden and they will come back year after year and just look beautiful. You can leave them, if you want to, in a pot outside. They should be fine. It's more the issue of if they get waterlogged and they're sat for prolonged periods of time in water. You know, if you're not sort of going out into the garden very regularly during the winter months. So they will be better off having them indoors for the festive season. Enjoy them indoors. Then come, you know, end of December, January, when you want to sort of spring clean your house and get ready for the new year, pop them in the garden, but put them in the ground. That would be my advice for having those hellebores come back next year. so that is about it. So that is the Hellebore and Twig planter kit and the little Hellebore kit.